I know as men, it is always nice getting female attention. But when was a time it got too much or became a bit creepy? Story 1. I am a male massage therapist, and I foolishly told one of my clients that I like to mountain bike. The next time I went for a ride, she was out there waiting for me in the middle of the woods. Who does that? Story 2. When she was openly hitting on me and trying to get me into one-on-one situations, even though she knew I had a girlfriend and my girlfriend worked at the same company. Story 3. Back when I was young and single in my late 20s, a woman in her late 30s and her friend approached me at a wine bar where I was sitting. She said she was recently separated and that her friend was taking her out for a good time. Her friend was dressed very provocatively and was quite touchy. They offered to come back to my apartment and were really pushy. They resorted to the insult, "Maybe he is gay," and ignored my obvious attempts to dissuade them. I said I was really interested in a physics string theory documentary, and they said they wanted to watch it. They gave off vibes of either one, they were going to rob me and steal my kidneys, or two, this was some sick prank where the ex would come over, assault me, and rob me. Story 4. I have been part of kink communities for the better part of 15 years, both niche and mainstream. There has been a lot of breath spent condemning predatory or creepy men in the kink world. Almost none has been directed at predatory and creepy women. That is upsetting because there are a disturbing number of predatory and creepy women. I have seen and heard women in those communities say things about men and male bodies that made my blood boil and my skin crawl. These things are genuinely signs of psychological issues and are far outside the boundaries of acceptable kink. Women who viewed men as easy prey to manipulate, weaken, and drain of health and resources. Women who view men as an inferior sex or gender. Women who sought to use our sexual and physical appetites to control us. Even more disturbing is the number of men who thought they had to be okay with this. I really wish we would normalize men standing up for men against women sometimes. Women already do it for each other. Story 5. I was at an emo night concert at a local venue. I saw a heavy-set woman in her late 40s or early 50s, and she kept touching my butt. I felt her hands rubbing against the back of my jeans many times that night, and I felt really uncomfortable. I turned around and saw that she was with a younger woman, who I guess was her daughter. Story 6. A friend of mine had a one-night stand that he met in a bar. They had sex at her place with her on top. Halfway through, she told him to punch her breasts repeatedly. He complied. When he woke up in the morning, he saw her standing in front of the mirror, caressing the forming bruises. He left as quickly as possible and never looked back. Story 7. There is a woman customer who behaves erratically. She would randomly scream at people on the street. Once, she started screaming at another woman walking across the road outside my workplace. Really odd behavior. Every time I serve her, I feel like she might scream in my face randomly, and I actually feel like she could become physical. But she seems extremely nice with me. One time, she came into my workplace, looked at me and shouted, "There is that handsome face I've been waiting to see." That creeped me out even more. She is obviously mentally ill or at least constantly on some kind of drug. The police have told me not to confront this woman who shoplifts everywhere in my area and is constantly in and out of jail because when confronted, she has used needles on people. Hearing that really creeps me out. My area is riddled with a drug problem and crime, with police cars constantly patrolling. It is not just the men high on drugs that scare me. The men are just as bad. I have been followed home twice by two men late at night and had one man, who was high, get right in my face around 1 p.m., saying offensive things to me. I was genuinely worried he was going to assault me. This is why I honestly do not feel safe walking around my local area alone, as a man, at any time of the day because of the people under the influence of drugs. Story 8. My partner and I used to go to gay bars, but we became annoyed by some women who were overly touchy and grabby. I find it uncomfortable how some women treat gay male spaces as if they are petting zoos. Story 9. I was about 14 years old when a woman, who was a Jehovah's Witness and over 30 years old, started walking next to me and flirting. I was wearing my school uniform. Story 10. A woman I had just met at a neighborhood party directly asked me for sex. right in front of my wife and her husband. She had had a few drinks. Not long after, their house was sold again. Story 11, remembered another one. In high school, when I was about 17 or 18, I went over to my girlfriend's house after school. We attended different schools. I was waiting for her and watching TV. Her drunk mom came downstairs, completely intoxicated and naked, and asked if I needed anything while I was waiting. She said, "If my daughter isn't taking care of you, I'm happy to." I replied, "I'm good. I forgot I have somewhere to be." I got up to leave and she said, "Your mouth is saying no, but your body is saying yes," and grabbed my crotch. I ran out of there. That creeped me out. Story 12. My crazy ex scared me a couple of times. I confronted her about something she had done, and she went from her usual bubbly girly demeanor to a weird low tone of voice, like exorcist type stuff, then afterward switched back as if nothing happened. Months later, she cried in front of other people, claiming I was a jerk. When that did not work, she said I was stalking her, telling stories about me wearing camouflage in her backyard carrying a rifle, following her in my truck, and it was all false. Then a year went by. I saw her at the grocery store, and she was happy and friendly, telling me I looked like I was doing well. Story 13. A woman told me it was too bad that I was taken because otherwise she would be willing to cheat on her husband with me. I did not correct her because the moral issue with cheating does not disappear just because you are the only one in a relationship. Story 14. The lengths a woman will go to cyberstalk someone always baffles me. The number of times I've caught my mom or sister snooping on their coworkers and judging their entire personal life from birth to present day without the coworker ever knowing is astonishing. I'm talking about the same level that hackers use social engineering to gather enough personal information to find an account on one site that uses the same email as a Facebook profile, which tags other people with the same last name and follows them to find pictures and details. Technically, all public information, but it's very creepy to obsess over someone you say, "Hi," to in the break room every so often and barely know their name. Story 15. When a girl from high school, after being rejected by me multiple times, threw a tantrum in front of me and a few others, accusing me of being gay or obsessed with big-breasted blondes for not pursuing her. That incident, along with my mother almost harming me with my own computer monitor, definitely changed how I view women. People can be very aggressive, including women. Story 16. This woman used to break into my house and touch me while I was sleeping. I would wake up to her rubbing her chest all over me. It was kind of cool, but I would get all hot and bothered and try to initiate sex. Then she would start acting scared like a child, and I would give up. The creepiest part was when I told her I couldn't see her the next day because I was flying out on tour and was planning on being with my girlfriend that night. She hit on my roommate and stayed the night listening to me. What really disturbed me was months later when her mother and grandmother came to one of my shows and scolded me for breaking her heart. I was in an open relationship at the time. Story 17. Making sexual comments about me as jokes that I feel would be recognized by everyone as inappropriate if said to a woman. I am 35, and she is over 50 and significantly overweight. I am blamed for being too sensitive and not having a good sense of humor. Story 18. Oh man, I have a few. Broke up with a girl many years ago. Took another woman back to my house a few weeks later, and my ex was sitting in the dark on my back porch. I swear only her eyes were visible. Took another woman home on a different occasion. Things didn't get too heavy that night. She came back the next weekend and told me that my name came up in couples counseling that week with her boyfriend of less than a year. Not a husband, but a boyfriend of less than a year, and they were discussing me in couples counseling. I didn't exactly kick her out of my house, but it was close. Hooked up with a woman one night, and less than a week later she left the most unhinged message I have ever heard on my voicemail. She said the mafia had messed up her face trying to get to me. I have no dealings with any sort of organized or disorganized crime. I dated someone who worked for a coroner's office who told me that she helped process her father after he passed away. Jesus Christ, I really need to reevaluate my life. I really was very promiscuous. File the next two under living in New Orleans. A former coworker once collected small discarded items of mine to use in some sort of spell or potion. Not a dating or hookup or any sort of relationship, but a self-proclaimed street voodoo priestess put a hex on me once. She had a baby doll with Bible verses written all over it, and its head looked like it had been stuck in a trash fire. She also had a sharpened pork chop bone with medical tape wrapped around it for a handle. She said I was damned to walk alone for the rest of eternity because I threw away her bag of turkey necks, her unrefrigerated turkey necks that she was carrying around in her purse for a week in a New Orleans summer. Story 19. Matched with a woman on a dating application and she asked me to take her to the hospital after a day of barely knowing her. Story 20. A young, fully grown adult woman once told me she believes in the actual physical existence of unicorns. It was a good thing I was not interested in her. Story 21. She acted like we were married after one date. When I said she was nice but not what I was looking for, she went on a tirade about how I had ruined all her favorite shows and that she could not believe she trusted me. One date, we had about 3 drinks and talked about ourselves for 2 hours at most. Story 22. In an elevator in a courthouse, a random woman said I smelled really nice and proceeded to sniff my armpits. Story 23. When I was working at a cupcake shop, a woman scolded me for my inappropriate jeans. I didn't really understand at the moment. She was really upset, and I couldn't figure out why she was so pressed about a hipster in mildly torn jeans selling fancy cupcakes in the arts district. I just stood there and nodded. She stayed in my store and called the main kitchen to speak to the owner. He got on the phone, and this woman started talking about how the man working the counter in the downtown location had jeans that were absolutely obscene, disrespectful, and disgusting, and she wanted him fired. I still didn't get it. She hung up and left, and he called me. "You good, man?" I said, "Yeah, but I don't know why she was being so weird. It's just a couple of holes in the knees." He asked, "Wait, are you wearing those bootcut jeans you stole from your wife?" Yeah. He said, "Yeah, so forget her. Don't even worry about it." I still didn't get it. He explained, "Those jeans are a little tight. She was offended by your print." Story 24. I was a teenager back then, and every time I went to my friend's house in the neighborhood, this lady next door would just stare at me like a bird of prey. She would drive slowly around the neighborhood multiple times, looking at me. After a few weeks, I stepped in front of her car and confronted her. She apologized and explained that she had a 3-year-old son who looked like me and wanted to know what he would look like in the future. She was the only lady who made me feel uncomfortably creeped out. I do not think a woman who creates situations that force a decision or action from you is creepy. I actually enjoy those. Story 25. We sat together at a table with other people in an art class in high school, and she told me that she drew a naked chibi of me. Story 26. A woman once sat next to me on a bus. I think there were other seats available that did not require sitting next to another passenger. However, some of the seats at the back could be unappealing, so I could understand. A few minutes later, she began to croak and lean into me with gradually increasing force. At that point, I suspected she was having a stroke. I asked her what the matter was, but received silence in response. The croaking stopped, and she got off at the next stop with her head upturned, as if looking down at me. It was unpleasant. Story 27. When she asked me if I liked plus-size women, her words, within about 90 seconds of meeting her, I froze. Story 28. There was a woman I met on OkCupid, and I thought we had connected as friends rather than dating partners. Either way, I was foolish enough to give her my main email account. For a while, within literally 2 minutes of me going active when I woke up in the morning, she would instant message me. In a different situation, a drunk stranger kept trying to shove her hands down my pants while I was at work. Story 29. Coworkers. Obviously, anyone could access my selfies on Facebook, but something about the way she said that she showed all my pictures to her friends at work to get their opinion was super weird. He needs to smile more, but yes, he's attractive. Thanks. Random lady who works with a woman I've just started dating. What? Story 30. In middle school, a girl had a crush on me and said she would knock on my front door and tell them she was my girlfriend. I told her not to come over because I didn't like her. She did. I poked a hole through my window and tried to scare her away with a paintball gun. I shot at her feet to scare her, and she said, "You missed." It was not until I threatened to call the police that she threw a rock at my window and left. Does that count? Story 31. When I was at a bar, an unattractive older woman grabbed my private area and said, "Hey, hot stuff. I have something for you in my hotel room." Story 32. Any woman whose overly sexual behavior comes off as creepy to me. I had to tell an ex to chill sometimes because all she would do is talk about my genitalia, sexual topics, and always try to grab me or something. It became annoying real fast because I wanted to talk about different things and do different activities, but she would say things like, "Why aren't we having sex in the back seat of your car? I am fully okay with you liking me sexually, but I will quickly stop dealing with you if that is all you talk about." Story 33. No, it's not nice unless you specifically want attention from that person. I remember in high school, a girl had a crush on me and asked me out. I said no and that I only liked her as a friend. She agreed that we could still be friends but often tried to be touchy and close to me. One time, I was having a conversation with a girl from our class that I liked, and she saw it. Then she followed me to the boys' washroom to ask what was going on. That made me uncomfortable. Story 34. Confessed to placing a hidden camera in her daughter's former boyfriend's home, inside a plastic decorative fruit bowl, to ruin his new girlfriend's marriage. Story 35. I walked into a party once at a friend's house, and a larger woman about my age got up and promptly asked me, "Are you interested in being intimate tonight?" I said no, and she replied, "Your loss," then went back to her friends. It was really awkward. If I did that to women, I would be seen as a strange person, but because she did it, she was considered a sex-positive woman. I understand making an approach, but she could have at least tried to get me interested before starting with, "Do you want to be intimate with me tonight?" Story 36. There is a girl who has been chasing me for months. She tries to flirt with me, and I don't give her any attention. She then resorts to bad-mouthing and catcalling me. It happened last autumn. I was really depressed, or else I would have stood up for myself. There was a girl in my gym, and mind you, I've never talked to her. I believe I caught her looking at me a few times, but I didn't pay much attention. She randomly approached me, put her hand on my chest, and started to feel around. I just walked away. We celebrate Holi, the festival of colors, every year. A few years ago, there was a new tenant in my neighborhood, in front of my house. 2 girls lived there. Mind you, they seemed underage, and I was not even a bit interested in them. Holi is a community festival, so my cousins, this other guy, and I were playing, and my cousin's sister invited those 2 girls to join us. We all went to her house to play, and I don't know how, but my group went away to get more color. In the meantime, those 2 girls jumped me. They put their hands inside my shirt and rubbed colors all over my body. It happened so fast that I couldn't even respond. When I washed my body later, there were scratches all over from how rough they were. I felt very unsafe then. I forgot to mention another story. I moved to a different state for study purposes. There was a girl in my neighborhood. She is underage too, and I think of her like my sister. Her mother approached me and asked me to help her with computer science, and I agreed. I tutored her for about a month. I don't know how she got my number because I never share my number with neighbors. She would call me from different numbers and try to flirt with me. It took me a long time to realize it was her. I stopped tutoring her and talking to her after that. Story 37. There was a woman who lived in my apartment complex, which consisted of 4 buildings on one large plot. She lived in a different building but knew someone well enough in my section to have access to the laundry room and storage areas. She appeared to have bipolar disorder. Some days she would say hello to me and be generally polite. Other days, when I said hello, she would give me a mean look. One time, I was in the laundry room and had just started a wash cycle. She came in and we were chatting, but she kept looking at my crotch area. I was wearing basketball shorts and a shirt, but she continued to look there. Fortunately, she did not make a move or say anything inappropriate, but it made me very uncomfortable. Story 38. An older woman who was friends with my mother was overly flirtatious with me when my mother was not around during my teenage years. I did not think much of it until I ran into her after I turned 21. She was drunk and somewhat flirtatious, which made me realize how creepy she had been at times. It made me uncomfortable, and I tried to get away from her immediately. Story 39. She stalked every girl I knew on social media. Girls think things like this are cute and okay, but they are not. Also, every single woman in those "are we dating the same guy" groups are legitimate psychopaths. Stalking, setting up traps for boyfriends, and making weird comments. Story 40. Had a butch lesbian threaten to harm me for looking at her woman. Supposedly. Obviously, I laughed because, come on. But what creeped me out was the obsessive following and wide-eyed stare all night. To the point that, 3 hours later, I said, "Look, crazy lady, stop looking at me like that or I'm gonna punch you." I was an in-shape 6 feet 4 inches college athlete. She was about 5 feet 8 inches and overweight. But I guess she really thought she was tough or scary. Story 41. When she described her revenge scenario against her ex who cheated on her, I was struck. She is a super sweet, unassuming, kind, and happy hippie girl whom I have been friends with forever. However, listening to her go through the details of what she would do if she actually followed through was honestly terrifying. It clearly illustrated to me that every woman is capable of dangerously psychopathic behavior. You need to always keep this in mind whenever you interact with any woman. No matter how kind, sweet, unassuming, or good they seem, each of them is one snap away from framing you for a crime you did not commit and landing you in jail while they meticulously ruin the rest of your life. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. This is more true now than ever before. Story 42. The only time I have been creeped out by a girl was when I dated a Christian. It was the first and last time. No offense to Christians. Story 43. In high school, freshman year, this girl got so close to me that I ended up pinned against a desk. It was so awkward. I even liked this girl, but it was still weird. Story 44. I've had a few. One was a coworker I had when I was 16 or 17. She was about the same age and very much a hugger, especially when I was around. Story 45. I was alert as a security guard in the hospital. She tried hitting on me and sent me a photo of herself. I did not know her. Story 46. One woman I supervised at work placed her finger on the back of my hand to indicate where to sign papers. She may have been nervous, but it lasted for 5 seconds. I thought it was inappropriate and not how I conduct business. Story 47. Walking home from school in my uniform at the age of 16, headphones in, a group of older women grabbed my buttocks. It has been the only time I have ever frozen and calculated what had just happened to me. They looked back at me and laughed. I just walked off looking back. It was really creepy. I never said anything to anyone about it at the time. Story 48. Oh, I have a good one on this. It was very strange. She kept staring at me, then walked up to me and said, "I bet you taste like ketchup." What in the world? Story 49. Last year, in 8th grade at a dance, a girl came up to me and started hugging me. I felt very uncomfortable. Story 50. I do not think I felt more disgust about a woman than the character being generous that is Angela Belcamino. Story 51. I have said this many times before. At an emo night concert, I felt someone grabbing my butt through my jeans. I turned around and saw a woman in her late 40s or early 50s with her daughter, who looked close to my age. I was creeped out and moved to another part of the crowd. Story 52. The mother of one of the girls on my diving team in high school drunkenly hit on me at a meet while I was in the stands talking to my cousin. She was an alcoholic, and you could smell whatever she drank coming off of her. I was 17, and her daughter was a freshman on my team who apparently had a crush on me. The mother walked up to me, started squeezing my arm, and said something like, "I can see why Anna likes you so much," then made a strange noise. That incident unsettled me for a solid year. One of the other team mothers slapped her hand off me and chased her out of the meet. I felt bad for her daughter, who was a shy girl, so I just tried to be nice to her. I had the same girlfriend for 3 out of 4 years in high school, so I had no interest in trying to pursue someone else. Story 53. Offered advice to an elderly woman on Reddit, and she assumed I only did it for sexual favors. When I tried explaining my side, She said I was gaslighting her and proceeded to throw several insults my way. Story 54. She called me handsome. That's never happened before, and it makes me sure she was a serial killer. I could never trust a woman who lies to my face. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.